Going over budget, failing to pay attention to spending. Not a good recipe for running your own household or for the North Carolina Department of Transportation. But indeed, that is the conclusion about DOT by NC State Auditor Beth Wood. Here to discuss the recent audit released by the Auditor's Office is Rick Henderson, Editor-in-Chief of Carolina Journal. Carolina Journal reporting on the story. Rick, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Donna.
So how bad are the finances over at the Department of Transportation?
Very bad, and I guess the thing that was particularly eye-opening about the audit report was that some of these issues have been out there for close to a year. That the department was improperly spending its budget, that it was basically had not allowed for reimbursing landowners under the MAP Act when the state Supreme Court had ruled some time ago that the state actually has to do this if the state takes someone's property for the purposes of building a highway and doesn't allow them the use of that property. Even if the highway is never built, the state's still got to give you some money for it at some point, especially if you're still paying property taxes on it. So
they had this legal ruling, and they never even put into their budget the money that was going to be required to pay these property owners. So that was a factor in all this. And then apparently they just didn't pay attention to spending on construction projects.
Yeah. The thing about the DOT is that it's to some extent it is self-funded through things like fuel taxes and registration fees and all that. But still, the actual allocation of the money comes from the General Assembly. And so there are different pots of money that DOT receives, but still the General Assembly decides, okay, this amount of money needs to go for, let's say, maintenance and repairs. This sort of money goes to construction. Do you need us to borrow money for a project? Okay, if so, let us know, and then we'll see if the local authority is going to do that or if we need to do it at the statewide level. But anyway, there are any sorts of decisions the General Assembly makes, and DOT essentially hasn't been abiding by them. And so that's caused some problems as well.
So they apparently had projects that they were just continuing to work on, maintaining roads, building some different things, and the money was flowing out, but it wasn't matching up with the money flowing in. And so now it's close to, about $750 million or so?
It's a pretty significant amount of money, and that's about right. And so the problems are that there have not been safeguards in place for the longest time. Members of the General Assembly, normally speaking, tend not to be really critical of these sorts of things because it's highway projects are kind of like military bases. You always want one in your district, and you want things, you want projects to increase mobility, to be sure, because that's the purpose of having this done at the statewide level. But also, at the same time, there may be a bypass that you want or something like that may not necessarily improve mobility all that much, but that may be something you can hang your hat on and say, I've gone to a ribbon cutting and we have this spiffy new bridge or whatever. And so the sort of the non-glamorous stuff like the repairs and maintenance, those are the sorts of things that have been shortchanged. Now, the DOT also said that we've had several massive hurricanes hit North Carolina over the past 3 or 4 years, and we've allocated for the normal level of hurricane impact, but we've gotten socked several times with bigger ones than were expected, and so we actually had to funnel some money or at least let some projects stay on hold and other things to take care of this disaster relief. That's a legitimate point, but then again, the General Assembly has been allocating money for disaster relief or has been reallocating the DOT's own budget for that, and so the audit still said that things weren't quite copacetic there.
What's the consequence of this? I mean, in my household, if I were to do something like this, I'd have to shut off the cable or not go out and buy the fancy meat, maybe buy hamburger for dinner.
Right.
You make up. In other words, you don't spend as much. Well, are they just not going to spend as much, or are they asking for additional money?
Well, they're asking for one thing. They are asking for some additional money. They also have laid off some contract employees as well. And so some of the road builders and other folks like that, some of those projects have just been delayed, and those folks have been laid off. Although, again, the audit sort of said, well, if you'd actually done your job right, you wouldn't need to do this now. There's another issue in that the DOT headquarters is supposed to be moved from Raleigh to Rocky Mount, and that's been delayed by COVID-19, and there's some sort of question about how fast that's going to take place. officials, both at DOT and some lawmakers who've been looking at this, have said everything's on schedule. It's going to happen, but it remains to be seen if they're going to be able to make that happen.
Is that supposed to take place sometime in 2020?
That's supposed to be underway. I mean, that sort of transfer is supposed to be in the works right now, and that's been waylaid a little bit by COVID-19.
And presumably that costs money as well.
Oh,
to
sure.
Move people, change your operations, etc.
Yeah, that was the sort of thing that was a bit controversial at the time it happened. Then again, there are a number of folks. I mean, we're seeing this happen at the federal level that not every agency needs to be in the capital city. And the thought was by moving the DOT headquarters to Rocky Mount, for one thing, you might be able to take advantage of a workforce that might not demand the same level of wages and benefits as, let's say, people in Raleigh. You might be able to attract a higher quality of employee for lower money if you go to outside of Raleigh, and so that's one of the reasons for the move.
Rick, what was the reaction of the Department of Transportation's leadership to this really searing audit out of State Auditor Beth Wood's office?
They accepted all the findings. They did say, Eric Boyette, who's the transportation secretary, said, basically said, we don't really quibble with the findings, but that they cited the high spending for disaster relief and the fact that they did have to make these MAP Act payments, even though they were supposed to, but they still said, well, we had to pay for MAP Act. Also said that they needed to have more money available for maintenance and repairs. That needed to be higher appropriation for that, so that they didn't need to. So basically, so that they could make sure that they could rebuild that budget. Typically, when we have had recessions or economic downturns, one of the things that suffers a lot is transportation spending, especially for projects for just maintenance and repairs, because people say, well, we don't have to. We're not replacing a bridge that's out. We're simply not going to repair this bridge right now. It'll be okay. And when those things build up, you have some serious problems down the road. You've got to spend that money eventually.
Are they in line for any federal money? We've seen several different packages come out of the federal government during COVID-19. Will they get any cash infusion?
Maybe in a future spending package. There's possible that you will see some of that in the. It's possible you'll see some of that in the existing legislation. Our CEO here, Amy Cook, has gotten together with the Platt Institute in Nebraska and has asked Congress for some flexibility to allow states to backfill budgets where they had basically were expecting to get money in, and then all of a sudden tax collections dropped off to zero. And so there's, I think, $300 million or something like that in the package that the General Assembly passed, but that's contingent on Congress giving them that flexibility. So the money's going to be coming in, and they're going to get some relief. It's just a question basically of how soon, and is it going to be from something that's already been appropriated by Congress, or if it's going to be some new funny money coming in from Washington.
Well, exactly. And of course, as you mentioned, part of their funding mechanism is gas taxes and new vehicle licensing and things like that. And so during a pandemic, not so much of that going on. And so those revenues are down. And so they're looking for some cash. And by the way, they do have internal auditors, but apparently their own auditors inside DOT didn't pick this up.
Right. That's right.